My name's Lesley Duxbury, and my practice really is about landscape. I've always engaged with ideas and themes around the landscape rather than anything else. I use printmaking as my main medium, along with photography. For this exhibition in Shifting the Anthropocene, I was really interested in my very local environment in Bryagalong. In previous works and through a long period of time, I've dealt with landscapes in very far-flung places, at the opposite ends of the earth actually. I've walked in the Arctic, and I've walked as far south as you can go in Chile, right down near Cape Horn. Then during COVID, we were really kind of confined to home. And so I spent a lot more time in my very local environment in Bryagalong, which is a very small town to the foothills of the Great Dividing Range. I've been living there now for 5 years and got attracted to the vegetation, I suppose, in that particular area. Very small pockets of this kind of vegetation left in the Gippsland area. So they've actually survived European settlement. It's survived logging, which has happened in that area too. Bryagalong's also in a fire-prone area, so twice in the past 15 years we've been under threat from bushfire, and actually I evacuated in the last one. I had this realisation that the trees were incredible survivors, but was it possible that they were going to be able to survive the next 50, next 100 years because of climate change? What I've done with these particular works is include some text pieces, which include the data about the tree, but you'll notice underneath on the carbon paper, there are texts that I've taken from Howitt, who was an explorer in the 19th century, who travelled through Gippsland. He was actually a surveyor for the government, and he was just surprised, coming from England, surprised at the ferocity of the bushfires and how the vegetation and the landscape recovered, but also the absolute ferocity of the fires as they swept through the country. I made it a project to document every tree, every one of these remnant trees in the town. And my partner and I also measured them. So we took a tape measure, and it was actually quite a lovely thing to do, because it meant that by passing the tape measure around the tree, we both hugged the tree at the same time. It was a really beautiful thing to do, actually, to feel the tree and to kind of caress it in some way. Almost make it feel wanted. It sounds a silly thing to say. And then I found that by getting the circumference of the tree, there was a particular height, which was kind of chest height. There was a way of calculating the age of the tree without actually chopping it down and counting the tree rings. In the artist's book, that does include all the trees around the town, mainly in public spaces, although I got permission to go into people's gardens and photograph their trees. And I also got the stories, because I found out that there were many people who loved the trees. They're trees also that it's almost impossible to grow anything underneath. So if you've got one in your garden, you're kind of stuck with a tree and nothing else. But people were obviously prepared to put up with that, to keep these majestic trees. There is one that I walked past on the way to the post office where I go to collect my mail. That was the one that was most familiar, and the one that made me really realise that we were living amongst these magnificent trees. Even in the 5 years that I've been there, you can see the way it's grown and how it's altered the earth around it, even though it's in the middle of the street. Occasionally AusNet come around every year and chop a few of its branches off for the power lines, and the roads chop a bit of roots off, but it still keeps growing. And it's that sense that it is still such a wonderful living being.